chimes?
Oh yeah, we don't have the chimes this week because someone forgot to bring them to our new studio.
Wasn't me. Just saying.
The Top 40 Timeline video show where we look at rock and roll and laugh and fart around for half an hour and totally waste your time and ours, as a matter of fact. And we're brought to you this week by RadioGTA.ca, Canada's national radio station, with a mix of everything from the 60s to today. And we support Canadian tourism. And we have a new morning show coming up with a guy by the name of, Kenny Tosh is his name. And he's a big DJ in Ireland, and his show is going to be live 7 a.m. our time. He'll be our new morning guy. And
welcome, Kenny.
We've got Ryan's 60s at 6 a.m. every morning on Radio GTA to kind of ease you into the day. You know what I mean? You don't want that loud rock and roll early. So Ryan will get you going early at 6 a.m. and then Big Daddy from 9 till noon. And then we have the one and only Magic Matt Craig from noon to 6, Moose Tracks, and then the Music Man, of course, weeknights, and we have Bill Smith on the weekends with the Music Mix. Bill is one of the biggest music bloggers in Canada.
Yeah, he does an amazing job. I've seen some of his stuff, and I see the posts he puts up with the different programming. And
he's really in contact, and he's also our music director on the station as well.
Hi, Bill.
And Bill is very informative about not only today's music, but yesterday's as well. And it's great to have him on board on the weekends. A lot of great shows. We have a blues show on Sunday nights at 10 o'clock. 2 hours of complaining. You know what I mean? It's great to have the blues on a Sunday night. Something about the blues and Sunday night that go together. And we've got that, plus other shows as well. Now, I'll let you lead in with some of your stuff. This, of course, I'm Big Daddy, and this is Leah Lywood. And Lee Lakin is on he's on assignment, as a matter of fact, in his garage playing the drums.
One of 3 kits or 4 kits or however many he has.
He's playing with his friends tonight because
be careful how you word that.
You have to be very careful, don't you? But
playing music with his friends.
Yes, he'll be back next week after playing with his friends. So what's the tidbit? Let's get going here.
Yeah, let's start off. So, one little tidbit to start off with. Before the goth clothes and raccoon makeup, Robert Smith of The Cure wanted to name his band Obelisk after the phallic-shaped monuments.
Oh, that's interesting.
I'll do a couple more. Yeah. John Lennon and Paul McCartney actually wrote a total of 295 songs together.
That's amazing, isn't it?
You just, when you sit and you look at that 295 songs together, and that's not including anything else that was written. That's just the ones they did together.
And I don't think that, and they wrote apart and then put their stuff together, which really made it special.
Yeah, they did all kinds of different things. So yeah, it definitely was cool. The year I was born, 1965, the Ohio State University Marching Band plays "Hang On, Sloopy, Sloopy, Hang On" for the first time when their football team takes on Illinois. It soon becomes an OSU favorite, and in 1985 is designated the state song of Ohio.
Well, "Hang On, Sloopy" was a huge hit.
Oh, God, yeah.
#1 song. Chum Radio is the only radio station in the world, I think, that didn't have it on their chart because we have our own version of "Hang On, Sloopy," Little Caesar and the Consoles. It was a slower one, but that song there, of course, Chum played it, I guess, but that song there was one of the biggest songs of the 1960s. And,
sorry, this really, like, you touch it and it goes.
Well, we're way off here somewhere.
Yeah, just bear with me a minute here.
But this is the Top 40 Timeline video show, and we'd like to say hello to a couple of people right now. Nigel Crane over at National Radio in the UK, and the boys at Radio 425 in Windsor, Ontario, who carry the show, and others. This week in 1969, BBC's Top of the Pops refuses to play the #1 hit in the country for the first time, the song Serge Gainsbourg's "Je t'aime moi non plus." Did I say that right?
Je t'aime moi non plus.
Okay, non plus. It's considered one of the first orgasm records, and that is one of the first to feature heavy female breathing and moaning.
See, I timed that well. That was for
Donna
you.
Summer was another one I remember in which song was it? I Feel Love or Love to Love You Baby?
Love to Love You Baby.
Yeah.
I think that's the one.
I Feel Love didn't have any moaning in it at all, as a matter of fact.
No, Love to Love You Baby. There was a lot of,
I know. I remember, especially the extended version, if you pardon my pun. 1984, the extraordinary popular children's show Thomas the Tank Engine and Friends begins its run on BBC TV, featuring a narrator by the name of Ringo Starr. And in 1990, I'll do a couple more here. West Side Story composer Leonard Bernstein, 72, retires from conducting due to emphysema. Sadly, he dies 5 days later. This week of 2000, on what would have been John Lennon's 60th birthday, the book Lennon Remembers, the complete Rolling Stone interviews, is released, containing material too controversial to publish years earlier. And I got some good news from a friend of mine, Terry Hill, who was a good friend of Richie York. You know who Richie York is?
I do.
I worked with Richie at FM 108, the original station. He was one of John Lennon's best friends. Mark Panopoulos and I, back in the day, we used to produce the John Lennon special with Richie. And Richie would bring his interviews in and his records, and we'd do a whole show. Now, according to Terry Hill, he has these on recording. So we're going to transfer them over.
Well, I'd like to hear some of those.
And these are interviews, Richie York's very own personal interviews with John. If you want candid John Lennon, Richie York is the man with the interview because he was his best friend. Not only an interviewer, he was there when they did the big sleep in there in Montreal. Remember when they all sat in the big mattress?
The bed in? Oh, yes.
The bed in, yes.
In Montreal, they laid in white sheets and blankets, and 2006, during a concert at Madison Square Garden, Barbra Streisand makes some disparaging remarks about President Bush. Right after a George Bush sketch, because she had somebody who looked just like him on stage with her. Barbra, trying to refocus the audience through a surprising smattering of "Sing Barbara," a guy from the stage right kept yelling something, couldn't quite hear what, and even during the sketch, Barbra stopped and turned and said, "Be polite now." Well, she had it, and the Brooklyn her came out. "Shut the fuck up," she yelled out at this guy. Can you see Barbara on stage?
Shut the
I
fuck
can
up.
though, because she is that's you know.
She's feisty gal.
Oh yeah. So anyways, that was kind of fun.
She's also got the voice of an angel too.
Well, she's got a beautiful voice. If you worked at Motown Records in the early 60s, you were expected to muck in. Martha Reeves worked as a secretary, the Detroit Spinners were chauffeurs, and the Supremes ran errands.
Isn't that amazing? Right?
I'll do one more.
Yeah.
When Rolling Stone named the former Beatles' ubiquitous hit the third greatest song of all time, John Lennon's hallmark lyrics of Imagine were described as 22 lines of graceful, plain-spoken faith in the power of a world, united in purpose to prepare and change itself. But the feel-good sentiments behind the song, Jimmy Carter once said was used almost equally with national anthems, has some serious communist underpinnings. Lenin himself called the song virtually the Communist Manifesto. And once the song became a hit, went on record saying, because it's sugar-coated, it's accepted. Now, I understand what you have to do. Put your message across with a little honey.
Yeah, just a little bit of honey. Right?
So he knew that was the way to go about it, because what he was saying and what it was being taken as was not quite
Lennon
the same.
they always, Lennon often said things that were taken out of context with the Jesus. He didn't, we're more popular than Jesus. He didn't mean that to insult Jesus.
No, but
God,
it was comments.
Yeah, but they're just blown out of proportion.
Always
Just
are.
because
Back then, they always were.
Just because John said it, you know what I mean? If John didn't say it, they wouldn't care, but John said it.
Back in the day, it didn't matter what you said. You were scrutinized for everything you said, you did. Didn't matter.
Even today you are, especially with social media.
Well.
You want to fight, pick a fight, just go on Facebook. 1902, Kalamazoo, Michigan, mandolin maker Orville Gibson founds the Gibson Mandolin Guitar Manufacturing Company Limited. In 1936, it would create the first commercially successful electric guitar. It's a good job the camera's facing that way, isn't it?
We have a very happy puppy.
We do. In 1928, Ennio Morricone, composer, orchestrator, and conductor, He's born in Rome to Libera and Mario Morricone. Libera, pardon me. Ennio grew up during wartime learning music while bombs fell. And he says he remembers often being hungry.
Can you
I'll
imagine?
do one more. 1969, King Crimson releases The Court of the Crimson King, which is considered by many as the first progressive rock album. And a little tidbit, though King Crimson is often assumed to be a pseudonym for Beelzebub, Prince of Demons, Sinfield insists that a Crimson King was any ruler during whose reign there were societal rumblings and sort of the dark forces of the world going on, which is...
Did you know that one?
I had no idea. I thought that was actually a form of the devil, saying the devil, but I guess I'm not.
King Crimson was one of probably my very first, very first bands that I absolutely. And I actually saw Peter Fripp at University of Toronto, and I met him. And all he did was sit on the stage with a few of his pedals that he used with different to explain the different ways that he used these in different songs. And what an amazing sitting that was. That was years ago, though. They were talking early 80s. 1970, the head of the FCC issues a statement in rebuttal to Vice President Spiro Agnew's complaint that radio stations were playing too many songs about drugs. The statement reads, "If we really want to do something about drugs, let's do something about life. The songwriters are trying to help us understand our plight and deal with it. It's about the only leadership we're getting. They're not really urging you to adopt a heroin distribution program, Mr. Vice President."
There you go.
1972, James Brown alienates much of his audience by meeting with President Richard Nixon in the White House and endorsing him in his bid for re-election. Brown, who doesn't claim a political affiliation, uses the brief meeting to push for a national holiday celebrating Martin Luther King Jr. Nixon says he's aware of that. Tape recordings from the Oval Office reveal Nixon pushing back against the meeting, saying, "No more black stuff. No more blacks from now on. Just don't bring them in here." When an aide explains that Brown has huge influence in the black community, he reluctantly agrees. In other words, he backpedaled on that one. Nixon is despised by most black voters, but Brown is politically conservative, hewing to a message of rising up on your own. His hope is that Nixon will provide opportunities that African Americans can use to rise up as business owners. His support for Nixon leads to protests, with some fans calling him a sellout. After Nixon won in 1968, Brown played at his inauguration. After Nixon's victory in 1972, Brown skips it because the White House refuses to pay for the performance. Oh, that's such a Brown thing. Brown soon grows frustrated with Nixon and takes him to the task on the 1973 song, "You Can Have the Watergate, Just Give Me Some Bucks and I'll Be Straight." When Jimmy Carter is elected president in 1976, Brown attends one of his inaugural balls.
There you go. James Brown was always in the middle of stuff going on.
It was his way or the highway is how it always ran.
And, he was a feisty little man. There's no doubt about it. But
look at the trouble he got into over all those years. Oh, my God.
Chuck Berry, same thing. He did it, Chuck.
Well, so did Chuck, but I think Brown was worse than Chuck.
I think Chuck,
in my opinion. I don't know, but
could you imagine Chuck
anything
Berry
I've read
and him in the same room, the two of them together?
Were they ever? I wonder.
I wonder if there's a picture. Maybe we can Google that sometime.
I'll have to look. Now you got me curious. There you go.
Those two there were so much alike in so many ways, and not only talent. I mean, they were both gods, but I don't know, just their ways. Because they didn't take any shit from anybody, and that's just the way they were.
No, but they kind of took things, especially Brown, to extremes that.
Oh yeah.
Whether you don't want to take any crap from anybody or not, some of the extremes that they went to, or he went to, especially.
Well, you don't always have to be a nice guy to be a superstar, And,
definitely not.
In 1977, an audience member throws an M80 firecracker on stage at the Aerosmith show at the Spectrum in Philadelphia. The explosion injures lead singer Steven Tyler's cornea and guitarist Joe Perry's hand. And the next year, Tyler is hit in the face with a bottle when they play the arena as well. I don't like them in Philly, do they?
Apparently
That's
not,
a
or they're
tough
just
one.
very overzealous.
I have a lot of friends in Philly, and it's a tough town, and the sports fans especially, they're rowdy as hell. Destiny's Child used to be called Girls'
No,
Time.
when you start with before the Beastie Boys.
I'll
you
get
missed
back
one.
to the Beast Boys. But
All
I
right,
wanted to
then.
get that Destiny's Child line.
You're right in there,
for you,
okay.
Because I wanted to read that, not you. So I'm going to do one more, and then I'm going to hand it over to Leah.
All right.
Before the Beastie Boys were objectifying women, they were objectifying other cultures as the Young Aborigines, which was their first band name. According to the band, they just wanted their music to be primitive in some way, and they eventually got
What they wished
for,
for.
I guess. There we go. Saturday night, 1975.
You already did
You want me to do
Destiny's
this?
Child. I don't think you finished it, did you?
Huh?
I didn't think you finished the Destiny's Child, but
Destiny's Child used to be called Girls' Time. Didn't you read
TYME.
that? TYME. There you go. Is it my
I didn't
turn
know
now, or
that.
you
That
want me
was
to do
new.
this?
I don't care.
1975, Saturday Night. A title later changed to Saturday Night Live, of course, makes its debut on NBC. Music is a big part of the show, and the first episode features two musical guests performing two songs each. Janice Ian doing At 17 and In the Winter, and Billy Preston playing Nothing from Nothing and Fancy Lady.
Nothing
The second
from nothing
episode is
nothing.
hosted by musician Paul Simon,
Got it. So,
smallest man in show business, shortest anyway. He reunites with Art Garfunkel during the show, one of the many music history moments that would be made up on the 30 Rock stage. Simon's episode, which also features Randy Newman and Phoebe Snow, is more musical variety than sketch comedy. The not ready for primetime players, including Chevy Chase and John Belushi, get more airtime on later episodes, but music gets its due. Season 1 performers included transgressive singers like Gil Scott-Heron and Patti Smith, but also pop stars like ABBA and Neil Sedaka, an eclectic mix of popularity and credibility. I wonder how they got on backstage, Patti Smith and Neil Sedaka. I wonder how they got on backstage.
I don't know. I don't think we'll ever know.
We'll never know that story.
Because I don't know that I would even remember to Google it at this point. And even if I did, I don't know if that's something that's going to be a highlight.
But I'm going to Google that Chuck Berry, James Brown, because I'm wondering if they ever met, because they're so alike. We will Google.
Yeah, they would probably have a real tough time working together. I don't know. Sometimes people like that shock you, though, in terms of how
They'd probably make some
do.
great music together. I'll tell
Hard
you
to
that.
say, right? Who knows?
Yeah.
1981, opening a show for the Rolling Stones at Memorial Coliseum in Los Angeles. Prince gets booed off the stage. You know what? Before I go further on that one, that's a very common thing with the Rolling Stones when they have other bands, because I was at the SARS Fest and Justin Timberlake came out, because most of the bands there was AC/DC, they were all kind of rock bands. And they were horrible. They threw things at him on the stage. They yelled, they screamed. And it's funny though, and this was just before the Stones, right?
Yeah.
So when the Stones came out, they brought him out with him and said, "Shame on all of you.
Yeah.
He's going to do the first set with us." And he had Justin
Absolutely.
sing with him, which was amazing. But I'm just noticing, here's Prince getting started.
Yeah.
Right? And here we go again. So Prince gets booed off the stage. The Stones have good intentions in bringing in a rising star, but his act isn't a good fit for this crowd. See, there we go. When he opens his trench coat to reveal bikini briefs, it gets ugly. Prince never again performs as an opening act.
And the Stones were just trying to help him.
But that was like Justin too. Justin kind of was pulled in with them, and same thing.
Yeah.
But everybody wanted the Stones, right? 1991, Apple Computers reaches an agreement with the Beatles Apple Corps, paying $26.5 million for the rights to run music software. An update to their 1981 deal that prohibited the computer maker from selling anything music related. The deal is revised from time to time as Apple Computer makes music a major part of their business.
It's a huge part of their business now.
Well, it's pretty much all their business, not really, but you want to do that? You want to do the next one?
2018, the
We got lots of
Music
time.
Modernization Act is passed into law, clarifying how artists, songwriters, and producers are compensated for music played on streaming services, online radio, and satellite radio. It also grants royalties for songs written before 1972.
And you know what picture I put up with this?
Yeah.
Trump and Kid Rock, because Kid Rock was there with him when this was all done.
Yeah.
And there's the photo I put up with this is showing Trump signing it.
Yeah.
and showing it, and Kid Rock standing there, and all different members of Parliament, or
Well,
Parliament,
you know,
Parliament,
the
but the
musicians
government.
deserve their money. It's their music, and
I agree.
I agree with them. I
agree.
Whenever I hear of a musician getting paid, I'm happy. I've done my job.
Yeah, I
Summer
agree.
of '69 isn't so much Bryan Adams waxing nostalgic over the dog days of 1969 as much as a reference to the sexual position of the same name. Did you know that? See now? I didn't know that either. Adams told
Keep going.
CBS News that a lot of people think it's about the year, but it's more about making love in the summertime in that position. It's using 69 as a sexual reference. Parts of the song are still steeped in hints of truth, though. Adams has gone on record saying that he picked up his second ever electric guitar at a pawn shop and that his fingers indeed bled while he was totally submersed in practicing. Other facts are undisputably wrong as well. Adams' first band, Shock, formed when the singer was 16, and summer of '69, co-writer Jim Vallance stands by the song as a wistful trip in the Wayback Machine. And I had no idea. I always thought that song was about the summer of 1969 because you know what? It was a great summer. I was a
Apparently,
kid,
he
8,
thought
9
so
years
too.
old, 8, 9 years old. The Mets won the World Series. We stepped on the moon. The Archies and Sugar Sugar was #1. I was a kid. I was happy. And now, you see, you've taken that away from me now. When I hear that song,
I didn't take it away. Talk to Brian
I'm gonna
about
think
that.
about sex now. It's
Talk to
disgusting.
Brian. That wasn't
There's
my
just
fault.
Certain things you can't get
I just
out of your head.
I just report it.
But you can't unsee things, Leah. Never mind.
I'm
Can I
in
do
trouble.
one
See
more?
that? See, now I'm in trouble now.
Can I do one more?
Yeah, we're good. We're only at 21
Oh,
minutes,
goody,
so
goody.
we're good.
In 1944, at Frank Sinatra's show at the Paramount Theater in New York City, police are called in to control the crowd, which is mostly teenage girls. Performances go one after another, and many audience members refuse to leave, which leads to the tensions in what was dubbed the Columbus Day Riot. I'll do a quickie here. From 1955, Chrysler introduces the world's first in-car sound system. Vinyl record players, complete with an assortment of classical records, mounted under the dashboard.
Can you imagine driving over a bump?
I've seen that before. I've seen them.
I've never actually listened to one in a car myself, and I gotta wonder. I obviously they're gonna have some sort of absorption, but I mean honestly, how many bumps can you drive over and that's not gonna jump while it's playing?
I mean,
come on.
How dumb.
They tried.
They tried. I only think it lasted maybe one season, and then people were sick and tired of it.
Yeah.
But,
that skipping stuff is.
It's interesting what you can do in a car, and of course later on we got the cassette decks and I remember when we were young and we used to have the Craig stereos and they used to turn them up and they just boom. And they still do that, the kids today, I know, but
It's funny when you look back at the stages where we went from like I remember as a little girl, Mom used to lift the top of the cabinet and there was the radio and the record player, and she'd reach in and turn the knobs, put the radio on, turn it up, and she'd grab my hand and we danced in the living room, just her and I.
And down the bottom right towards the record player was the bottle of wine and the bottle of schnapps.
Not when I was little. I was only about 4 or 5 years old then.
You said we got time. Of an old buddy of mine.
We're only at 23.
Yeah, we're
We
23.
got lots of time.
Okay, Jack Barr, who I worked with for years, God bless him, he was a news guy with me, but he was in radio for years. He worked at CJRN in Niagara Falls, and the station was built over a bridge, and it was attached to a bridge. And their control room, when they played the records, and if a truck went over the bridge, that's the way radio was back then. You dealt with
it is what it is, right?
You got to fix that turntable, Jack. You know what I mean? Every time a truck goes over the bridge in Niagara Falls, a record would skip on the radio station. You know what I mean?
But it's amazing when you look back to when Victor Radio, when all that era, when it actually first sprouted and became, up through the course of the different size records, and then you got your cassettes, and then you got your 8-tracks, and so on and so on and so on. It's kind of interesting. It's something you kind of look at your kids and you go, You don't know what you missed, really, because when I look back at it, it's nice to come forward and into the newer era, but I'm glad I didn't miss any of those, for the most part.
And it was a very romantic time, We didn't look at it at the time as it was, but it is now. Here's another story of skipping records before we carry on.
Alrighty.
I did the all night show at FM 108, and our studio was here, and my car was parked here. I went out and opened up the outside door. I was dying for a smoke, left my cigarettes outside. This is 3 o'clock in the morning. Doesn't the door close on me? So I'm stuck outside.
The radio's just going doo-doo, doo-doo.
I had a 45 on.
Doo-doo, doo-doo, doo-doo.
From the parking lot at FM 108, there was a window where you could see into the studio. So I stood there for an hour and a half.
Watch the needle just keep doing this.
Keep go like this, and listening to it on my radio wave, fa-fum, fa-fum. And then my boss will have it off at 4 a.m. with a big red face going,
what the hell?
All right, carry on.
I wish I could have been a fly on the wall for that.
Guy could tell.
Oh, can you imagine? I can't. I'm stuck on that. Doo-doo, doo-doo, doo-doo. Everybody's going, what's going on with FM 108?
I never forget my boss's face, Bill Evanoff. He was so angry.
Well.
Then was the time that I dropped all the keys in the toilet of the radio station van. That didn't go over well either. But apart from that.
1957. Let's talk about Little Richard for a minute. He renounces rock and embraces God, telling the crowd at his show in Sydney, Australia, if you want to live for the Lord, you can't take the rock and roll too. God doesn't like it. After the tour, Richard gives up secular music, gets ordained as a minister, and records gospel. He doesn't return to rock, but he does in 1962.
Yeah, he turned his back on rock and roll. He should have kept going the way he was going too.
But he did. He did come back in '62, and I think he did start
but there's a great
to record
part of his creativity, and that's gone forever.
Yep. 1970, Jesus Christ Superstar opens on Broadway, telling the story of the last 7 days in the life of Jesus. I was only about 5 or 6 years old, and I remember this well, even as a little girl.
Well, when Jesus was around, or 1970?
I think we'll go just to 1970.
So, yeah.
Andrew Lloyd Webber and Tim Rice started working on the show about 6 months after completing their original 30-minute version of Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat, Donny Osmond, if you recall.
Yeah.
Also a Bible story. MTV Records insisted on a single before they would pay for an album and stage production. So the duo wrote Superstar, which was recorded by Murray Head. Released in 1969, it did little damage in America or the UK, but sold well in Brazil and a few other countries to make the project viable. Webber and Rice had been working on the play and had the songs ready in early 1970, but they faced a daunting task. We had the colossal job of actually getting people to sing on the album. Can you imagine? Said Tim Rice. Tim Rice said that almost took longer than writing it. Released in the September of 1970, Mary Magdalene's song about Jesus, I Don't Know How to Love Him, sung by Yvonne Elliman, was a modest hit in the summer of 1971. The play opens at the Mark Hellinger Theater amid protests from religious groups, but proves to be very successful. Elliman plays Mary Magdalene with Ben Vereen as Judas and Jeff Van Holt as Jesus. In 1973, a film version is released with Ted Neely, as Jesus, Carl Anderson as Judas, and Elliman once again in the role of Mary Magdalene.
Now, that song by Murray Head, which was called Superstar.
Jesus Christ, Superstar.
But you know what his other hit was?
No, I don't think
One Night in Bangkok.
Oh, okay. I know the song. I don't think I really related the two together, though.
Well,
okay.
there you go.
I didn't know that.
That's why I mentioned it.
There you go. You got me this time.
You got to be Big Daddy sometimes.
Yeah, you got me this time.
1979. Here we go. We just
sorry.
got lost. 1979. Jethro Tull's lead singer Ian Anderson has his right eye torn open by a thorn situated on a rose. An adoring fan threw on stage at the band's Madison Square Garden concert. All done with love, but my God, it hit him.
Well, I'm sure nobody meant to hurt him.
No,
He was throwing a rose at him.
Yeah.
Can you imagine?
Wow.
Jeez, they must have felt horrid, though. Imagine the fam.
Can you imagine? 2009, Justin Bieber, 16, meets 14-year-old fan Haley Baldwin, daughter of actor Stephen Baldwin, backstage at the Today Show. Years later, they start dating, and in 2018, they get married. Look out. Here's a few tidbits here, or one of them anyway. At the height of their popularity in 2008, the Jonas Brothers released a song called A Little Bit Longer, which sounded like a breakup song. Oh, here we go again. But Nick Jonas told MTV that the song was actually about his struggle with type 1 diabetes. I had a day when my sugar was out of range, and I sat down at the piano and wrote it in 20 minutes. And it was because I had the strong inspiration, he told MTV shortly after the song came out. And when you re-examine certain lyrics, like waiting on a cure, but none of them are sure, the meaning seems clear in hindsight. It's great. That's a great piece of trivia. Ozzy Osbourne was quoted,
Okay,
and that's
get the beer out of your mouth. Let's do it again.
That's translated to Black Sabbath, we're a hippie band. We were into peace.
Leave it to
That's what it
Ozzy.
really meant. That's Ozzy. You gotta love Ozzy.
Leave it to Ozzy.
You gotta love Ozzy.
We're
I
at the
love
bottom.
Ozzy.
There we go.
You know, you look at Ozzy,
So-
you just go up and hug him. Ozzy was great.
Yeah, he's a character. 1941, Paul Simon is born in Newark, New Jersey. He meets his longtime music partner, Art Garfunkel, when they both perform in a school production of Alice in Wonderland for their 6th grade graduation. They would become Simon and Garfunkel instead of Tom and Jerry.
Tom and Jerry, that's what they were at first.
In the beginning, it most definitely was.
And you know, when I think of the two singers together, you think of the Everly Brothers, but then a step above the Everly Brothers, you have to put Simon and Garfunkel.
Yeah, they both had their outs.
They both had, but I think that
You know.
those guys were the kings of harmony between the two of them.
Yeah.
But beautiful songs they wrote.
Oh, yeah,
Scarborough
very
Fair,
talented, beautiful.
Scarborough Fair, Sounds of Silence, just
Oh, God,
beautiful,
yeah.
beautiful. And Paul Simon had that certain time in the 60s where he wrote all this magic stuff. I mean, I'm not saying Graceland wasn't, but I'm saying the stuff in the 60s, early 70s, that was magic.
Yeah,
Especially the stuff
that's
with
some
the
good stuff.
Bridge Over Troubled Water.
When I hear what was the album again? I can't think of it. The one that had Bridge Over Troubled Water had a bunch of
That
the
was.
really big hits.
Well, the greatest hits.
That's and I can remember being on one of. I mean, to this day, it takes me back because I was a young girl on my parents' cabin cruiser all summer long, and other than the Beach Boys and a few others, Simon and Garfunkel.
No, they're always
It was on the 8-track, was in the player, and there it was.
iconic, man. I mean, just totally iconic, Simon and Garfunkel.
1957, the Four Preps, Rosemary Clooney, Frank Sinatra, and Bing Crosby all appear on the CBS television special to introduce the brand new Edsel automobile.
Well, there's a car that hung around for a while.
The car did, but the show didn't. I don't think it lasted very long, but they tried. The last two, you want to take?
The Edsel didn't last too long either, really. It was a big flop, wasn't it?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know a lot about them, so I'm not a car.
I love looking at Edsels nowadays, though. I mean,
I love looking at any of the old cars anymore.
Well, the
you
new
look
cars
back.
don't have any personality, man. They don't. They really don't.
No, they all look similar.
1965, The Who recorded My Generation at Pye Studios in London. When released as a single, it reached number 2 on the UK chart, held off the number 1 position by the Seekers' The Carnival Is Over. Roger Daltrey would later say that he shuddered the lyrics to try to fit them into
He
the
stuttered.
music.
That's
Yeah,
a key
stuttered the
word. He
music.
stuttered them.
Oh, okay. Really? I didn't know that either. The BBC.
Yeah, you've heard this on My Generation, because my generation, that's the stuttering.
Fit them to the
Right?
music. Have you seen the seniors on YouTube singing that?
Yes,
in England?
I have.
Isn't that
I did.
inspiring? The BBC
I
initially
did.
refused to play the song because it did not want to offend people who stutter.
That's why I said you had to say stuttered, because that was kind of the key to what happened with the BBC again.
Are so worried about offending everybody. Shut the fuck up. 1986. That really pissed me off about the BBC. They're so staid. Even today.
But why would who's going to take offense? It's the Who. They're not. People know. I gotta. You gotta say. People know they're not doing it to offend people.
Yeah. 1986. Neil Young headlines the first Bridge School benefit concert in support of the nonprofit institution that provides education for children with verbal and physical disabilities. Young and his wife Peggy co-founded the school when their son Ben was born with cerebral palsy. The all-acoustic concert featuring performances by Bruce Springsteen, Don Henley, Tom Petty, and reunited Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young turns into an annual event that adds many more big-name acts to the roster, including regular guests Pearl Jam as well. Is that the show?
That's it.
Oh boy, we're bang on with time there. And we've been brought to you by this week by Radio GTA and our new morning show with Kenny. Kenny is coming up, and we're looking for Kenny Tosh will be here, 7 a.m. Radio GTA Eastern Time weekday mornings. I'll be on, and we've got Ryan with the 60s at 6 a.m. every morning, weekdays, to get you into gently into the day. You don't want to be blasting AC/DC at 6 o'clock in the morning, you know what I mean?
Well, some
Some
would.
people do.
Some would.
Yeah, some people do. I mean,
Some
we
would.
do. I mean, I can. I can play.
I'll tell you this. I don't know that I'd want that every morning, but I was that person at one point a long time ago.
Ryan will break you up, wake you up nicely with a nice 60s music. Not mellow. We'll be rocking it too. All right, so we're done and no
it.
chimes. So bing, bing, bing. And
Next week we got to get chimes.
get the chimes back. Yes. Have a great week, everybody. And the Top 40 Timeline Radio Show is copyright, of course. As we sit here with our acting, well, I got my acting.
Actually, my son's been wearing mine a lot lately. I don't know if I'm ever getting it back.
All right, we'll see you next week. Assume the position.